Hello. I thought that maybe you guys had seen enough of this kind of content, but I asked on Twitter and y'all still wanted to see it. So I'm going to be vlogging my reading experience of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. This is the newest Hunger Games book, which is really more of a prequel and not a part of the original series. So this is a book I'm reading for House Salt Book Club, which is the book club that I'm a part of with a group of my friends. And I'm a little nervous to read it. I mean, like, not super nervous because Hunger Games does not, like, define me. Like, it's a very good series, but I wasn't, like, a huge part of, like, the fandom or anything. But I just don't know if this is what I want to read right this second, because I haven't heard any spoilers for this, but I've heard a general feeling of, why did she even go back to this world? This is not what I wanted out of this world. You're following the villain. So we'll see. And it's a fairly chunky book for the Hunger Games books not being very large. But I'm hoping I can get through pretty quickly, so that's cool, and you guys will see my thoughts. I want to enjoy aspects of it. I'm not going into this book like expecting to hate read it necessarily, because I don't tend to go into books like that. But I'm nervous. I'm more bracing myself for disappointment, I think is a good way to describe it. So I will let you know how this goes. So I'm 150 pages or so in, and I do have thoughts. Before I get into talking about my experience, just a heads up that there will be spoilers in this, because that's what I want to do with this reading vlog. So there's a couple things that I'm like enjoying, I guess. I will say that I haven't reread The Hunger Games since I first read them. So it's been years since I've read Mockingjay, and I've seen the movies a bunch of times, but you know, not the same. But there are still throwbacks to the original series, so Tigress being his cousin, I'm assuming that's the same Tigress that they run into in Mockingjay. That's a thing. So Tigress being in there is cool, and then all of the images of like roses and his grandma with the roses and his mom smelling like roses and all this stuff. However, this is a challenge to read knowing who he is as the villain of the series, because it's kind of the same problem that I have with all villain origin stories when they are prequels to the original series, is like, I know what the outcome is. So any way that you try to pull on my heartstrings to make it be like, oh, will it be different? Like, no, you know that it's not. So I actually don't tend to love these kinds of like origin stories. So the entire time I'm reading this, it's this constant pull and push with my brain where it's like, you sort of start to feel for him, and then you're like, he's an asshole, and then like back and forth, and it's not even like, oh, he's fine here and you know that he turns into an asshole. Like at the beginning he's already like a selfish jerk. I mean, at the beginning he's cooking cabbage soup for himself and he's like, it smells like poverty. Like he's definitely an ass. So like you see who he's going to be, and it makes you like, your brain, it doesn't let you pull for him, but he's also not like evil enough to make it just be like a fun villain story, you know? I mean, not that the story of Snow would be fun ever, but like some villain stories are like portrayed as kind of fun. So this doesn't, I don't know what the goal of this is going to be. Also, what makes me uncomfortable is Lucy, who is his district girl, it's tribute. There's like some flirtation feelings there, and I'm like, this is high-key inappropriate because she's the oppressed, he's the oppressor. I don't want to see a love story of flirtation here, especially knowing who he is. Now, there are plenty of other characters in here that this could have followed, with maybe him being like mentioned on the side. That would have been helpful, like the guy that's from District 2 and is now part of the Capitol. I'm forgetting his name because all these names are weird. Like whenever I even read his name in the book, I don't even say it. I just like, I'm like, it's Snow. Like, I don't like it. But anyway, that kid, it's like we could have followed him, and then that would have been a more sympathetic story because he wouldn't technically be the oppressor. He would fall in this like gray area. So like his story would be more interesting. Following Lucy would be more interesting. Following a character that isn't a character we already know would be more interesting and not leave me feeling just like icky. Also, since it's the 10th Hunger Games and you can see what they're starting to do as far as like the mutts and the like dragging the tributes' bodies after they've died, and then the Hunger Games hasn't even started yet, like I get that it's framing like, how are we, you know, they're in this kind of period where there's still some sympathizers, so they're trying to make the tributes out to be, you know, horrible, make them out to be rebels, all this stuff. Like, it's all a propaganda campaign, but it makes me hella uncomfortable to read. It just like, I don't, like, there is some kind of interesting stuff about, you know, you see how it eventually gets to the Hunger Games that we saw in the first Hunger Games book, and, you know, like, giving like donations to the tributes and the interviews and like all of that and making it more of a spectacle. But again, I don't really want to be following Snow, because although he has moments of like sympathy specifically for his tribute, who keeps insisting that she's not even from a district, so it's like a loophole for him, it's just like not super fun. So this is very easy to read. However, I kind of see what people are saying about this like being because I don't love following him, and I don't love the little budding romance that they're trying to do with the oppressed and an oppressor. So yeah, we'll see. I just keep reading stuff that makes me go like, oh. There's a part where Lucy was saying that, like, you know, you're a good person, and like you and your friend, again, I don't know his name, Sejanus, but she says, you know, you're the only two that treated us like human beings, and I'm like, his friend did, but he went there just for his own personal gain, and he does kind of think you're all like animals. So except for you, you know, because you're different. Hi, I just finished filming, which is why I look nice on this vlog for once. But this is not fun. I know I've already said that. However, I didn't read at all yesterday, so it's been a few days since I've updated, because I didn't want to read this. Again, it's not a book that's like poorly written, it's just like, I don't want to. Like, I don't want to. Like, this could be written about anybody else in this world and it would have been far more interesting and I would have actually enjoyed it, but making me suffer through having to listen to Snow and know what he ends up like and it be in his brain, and I hate it. So we had him kiss Lucy goodbye, so now they have an actual romance, kiss her goodbye, and then in the little bit that I've read today so far, he's like, you know, the people from the districts are still like, they're beasts and they're barely human, and you know, they're being kept in this cage at the zoo, which has been a thing this whole time, which really grosses me out because it's like, we've had actual humans in our history kept in zoos, and I get that, like, that's probably what she's sort of pointing out, but it's so icky. And then we also have Lucy sort of being described as this like covey, which feels very Romani, and that just feels very icky as well. Like, I'm not trusting this to do good things with that. So yeah, I don't want to read it. And like, I'm only a little less than halfway through and she's about to go into the Hunger Games and they just had this kiss. And I know, like, she's from District 12, so I know she's not winning because, like, she's, you know, Haymitch is the only other victor from their district. So, like, it's just, oh, like, and we have these other characters that are like sympathizing with the district people, and you know that Snow doesn't, and like, even if he seems sometimes like he's waffling, he's ultimately still like, we're better than them, and we're like, they're basically beasts and they're awful, and I'm doing this all for show and I'm just manipulative and whatever. And it's like, I don't want to read about this. I'm gonna actually kind of try, I think, to just like speed read through this. I mean, I'm actually still gonna read it, but I'm just gonna try to like put my head down and just read a ton of it, because I don't want to be reading this for like multiple days and not read anything else. Like, I want other things. So yeah, I'm gonna try to read more today than I read yesterday, because I basically got into other hobbies and research and stuff to avoid reading this. Sejanus, or whatever his name is now in the arena doing like a death ceremony for Marcus. And it's so irritating because it's like mirroring the whole situation with Rue and Katniss in the original Hunger Games, but this happened before now. And it's like, if this happened before in this kind of situation and Snow was there for it, Snow should have been prepared for it, you know? Like, there's this doesn't really make sense to me. And also it shows yet again how he's like, these people are barbarians. Like he's like, oh, this is so primitive that they're doing this. Like that this is a thing that they do. Which I get that this has to happen because he becomes a villain, but like, I don't know why I'm reading about him. Like, why am I not reading about the kid doing the ceremony? Like, why isn't he the protagonist of this? I do not understand the motivation for having, in this day and age, this character be the one that's followed. Like, I just don't get, like, and I know that I don't tend to love villain origin stories anyway in this kind of situation. I don't like this. Like, if this wasn't the newest Hunger Games book that we're reading from book club that I wanted to like talk about my opinion of and discuss with people, because a lot of people are reading it and they would want to talk about it and whatever, I would have DNF'd this probably at this point. Again, it's not badly written. I just don't know the point, and I don't know if I care to know the point. I have more than half of this book left. Like, I don't really want to be reading this. But I'm in a book club. And we all held out hope. For nothing. Okay, I have found something that I do find interesting. Not necessarily loving to read about it, but I do find it interesting. So one of the things about the original trilogy was that the Hunger Games is like an exciting thing. It's made into this spectacle and everything like that. So much so that even when the movies and stuff came out, we had companies like making makeup collections and nail polish collections for the Hunger Games for the Capitol, because like it somehow glosses over, even though you know it's kids killing other kids and you see it, it makes it into this like spectacle, and that's part of the whole thing. In here, it's only the 10th Hunger Games, so the atrocity of it is like so much more apparent, and like the grotesqueness of it, because they haven't figured out how to make it more of like an event. So the getting to see how they're doing that and like adding in the bedding, which is fucked up, but then you see how they're making it into an event, and like adding the food and, you know, prizes and stuff like that, while also having the more obvious factor of like stringing up some of the kids after they die, like dragging their bodies and all this stuff, and like leaving the bodies in the arena so it's more obvious, where like in the newer Hunger Games they remove them right away, and they like mask over what it is, and in here they're still not, and most of the people are still like ugh, and they don't want to be watching it. So I think that part is interesting to kind of see how we got to the spectacle that it becomes. It's not fun to read, but it is like an interesting thing to kind of see like how it started out and how these adults that are like mentoring him are trying to morph it into what it eventually becomes. So it's the next day. I took a nap to avoid reading this book at one point. So the actual Hunger Games portion is done. That was possibly some of the most interesting, because it showed some of the things that they would again implement into the like future Hunger Games. But Lucy won, which I kind of didn't see coming. I don't know, because they didn't mention there being another Victor from 12 unless it just gets erased. So yeah, and he got accused of cheating, I guess, and he's becoming a peacekeeper, which again, like, I mean, that's the next part, and I think it's like the last part of the book, because that's how much more I have left. I just feel like the way that the Capitol is, that wouldn't have just been ignored. Like, wouldn't this have all been information that somebody in the rebellion, in the original trilogy, would have gotten a hold of, since it was all televised, and District 13 were hackers and like technology people? I mean, I guess we'll figure all that out, but like, yeah. And again, it was just very awful to be reading about him being like, Lucy's mine, you know, if she wins this, I'll have her, like all this very possessive, like she's property stuff. It's just not a fun thing to read about. So yeah, I'm gonna try to keep pushing through it. Part of me was like, maybe I'll read like 30 pages a day and then read another book, but since I'm getting closer to the end, I'm like, maybe I can just like push through it. It's just not a super fun reading experience. So I'm going to make a real effort to finish this book today. I have a little less than 100 pages left, so it would be great if I could do that. Snow continues to be awful, obviously. There's a lot of lines of him being like super possessive of Lucy as just like a possession of his. Like at the beginning of the chapter I just read, he's saying that he feels like it's unfair that she gets to be free in District 12 while he has to have like a schedule and stuff as a peacekeeper. And he said it would be better that she be locked up in the Capitol because at least he'd know where she was. Again, I don't think Suzanne Collins is trying to romanticize Snow, so I don't want people to think that that's what's happening. Like, I think she's putting all the stuff in here to show how awful he is. However, I don't want to read about him. Like, I don't want to read about this, and I don't really understand the point. The things that we're getting to see are, I guess, kind of interesting, but I also didn't need them. So we have these things with him collecting the Jabberjays and the Mockingjays, and kind of hating the Mockingjays for no reason. Like, he just hates them. He wants them to die, which doesn't really make sense, because if we had this thing where he hated music, then it would sort of make sense that he hated the Mockingjays, but we have his mother being a music lover. We have him being interested in love with Lucy Gray, who's a singer. So, like, why does he hate these Mockingjays? I mean, obviously it's like, okay, he hates the Mockingjay later, he hates Katniss, but like, it just doesn't really make sense. So yeah, I mean, again, it's interesting to see some of the stuff. Like the Hanging Tree song popped up with Lucy being the person to sing it. I kind of figured that would happen. So we're having some of these things, but I still feel like following another character and maybe having Snow as a side character would have been far more like interesting or just like enjoyable to read about. Like, again, the things that I'm mentioning as far as the history of like Panem and the Hunger Games is like interesting kind of to see some of these connections. But I didn't need to. Like, I never was sitting there like, I wonder how this happened. I didn't need that explanation, really. I mean, it's not that complicated. Like, you can kind of think back to how this eventually evolved. So it's not like this big complex story. And you could have shown all that stuff through someone else's experience. Tigress even. Like, anyone, really. So I just don't quite understand why she felt compelled to write this particular book. There are some mysteries now in the story that are a little bit more like, not compelling, but now that I'm almost to the end, I'm like, okay, I'll be interested to see like what the situation with this was, like with Dean Highbottom and Snow's dad. Like they had some kind of conflict with Lucy and like her ex that got her into the Hunger Games. Like what was all of that? I guess now that I have 100 pages left, it's like, okay, like I'll get the answers to that, that's cool, but it's not compelling enough to make me want to continue to read it. Now that I'm getting towards the end, I'm just kind of building momentum and it's a little bit easier, but generally speaking, I still would have probably DNF'd this if it hadn't been for reading this for book club. It's not poorly written, it's just, it doesn't need to exist. Not everything needs a prequel. People can fill in the gaps themselves, or you can write a like guide to the Hunger Games for people that really care. This whole story didn't need to happen. Hopefully you'll get my final thoughts tonight, because I would really just prefer to be done with this so I can move on to something else that I genuinely would like to read. It's 1 in the morning, so I apologize for the lighting and my glasses, but this was hot fucking garbage. Man, was this a pointless read that I continue to be angry about. So, you know, Sejanus dies because he rats him out, and then he kills some more people, kills the mayor's daughter. Basically, none of the girls really have any agency in this, I noticed now, throughout reading the whole thing. None of the women have any agency or, like, complex characters. I can't believe that the same author wrote Katniss and Joanna and, like, some of these characters that we have really liked over the years. And I know what's the point, and that Snow is selfish and this is all his story and how he sees it. I get that. I get what it's like sort of attempting to do, but like why did it attempt to do it? Like why did Suzanne Collins feel we needed this story? Because we didn't. Thing is, The Hunger Games is a trilogy that sends messages and has themes. Like, what is the theme of this? Like, just evil is evil, selfish is selfish. This is how somebody tricks himself into thinking that what they're doing is okay. I don't even really know. Like, this didn't really teach me anything new about Snow as a character. Like, he doesn't really even have an arc, because he starts out being a shit, and he's a shit the entire time, and he ends up being a shit. Like, you didn't see any growth or anything, and we're forced through this like fake romance in which he's always an ass and selfish and possessive and completely doing it only for his own gain, and Lucy Gray maybe does like him, but why? And he gets everything. I mean, obviously we knew this. We know going in that he's going to get everything, but he, you know, gets inherited by Sejanus's like family. He gets everything he ever wanted. Like, you know that like Gall is training him to be, you know, something. I just didn't need to see it. I mean, again, the Easter eggs of it and like seeing how things turned into what they were, I guess was like okay. But again, I didn't need it. Like, I don't know what the point was. And even the very end where they're gonna run away, it's like insufferable to read. Like the last bit of it, all of it I feel like was kind of boring, but the last bit of it was especially boring where he's in 12, because it's just like, what is the point of this? And then they go to run away and he already is being a brat, like, I can't live like this. And then he thinks she finds everything out about him, but I don't think that she does. And she just disappears. And that's the explanation for why no one knows about this other Victor. But like, I'm still like, that's a shaky, Like, I think 13 would have like found something out about that. Like if 13 was watching them so closely, they would have known about this Hunger Games. They would have known these things. Someone would have remembered. And it's just the explanation of like, well, no one really watches them. Like, people uncover shit like really easily. I mean, it goes anonymous out there, like, is uncovering shit left and right. So like, I don't believe that that would have just gone unnoticed. So yeah, the few Easter eggs, I guess you could call them, don't make this worth it. It was boring. I don't know the point. And not that everything has to have a point, but when you have a Hunger Games prequel, and the Hunger Games definitely has a point, why? And then even in the acknowledgements, she writes something about like, and I'm not even going to say his name because I read this whole book and I still don't even know how to pronounce his first name, but she says, to all the readers who've invested in first Katniss's and now, I'll actually try it right now, Coriolanus's tales. No one's investing in his tales. And if you are, ooh, why? I think I'm gonna give it 1.5 stars because it's not horribly written and a few of the Easter eggs were like, cool. What a waste of fucking time. So I'm assuming that you've read this or that you don't care to read this if you're watching this vlog, so comment down below and let me know your thoughts. If you're like, it doesn't sound like a lot happened, yeah, because like a lot of it was really pointless. Anyway, I'm still like annoyed about that. I feel like this book could put me in a slump, so I'm gonna need to find something immediately that is fun to read and not hot garbage. People, any of our fandom favorites from back in the day, like the early aughts or the early 2010s, whenever, just don't come out with any more books anymore. Like, just stop. If you've been away, stay away. No, I'm nervous because Kristen Kashore's coming out with a new book. I'm just, don't. Anyway, if you've read this, comment down below, let me know your thoughts. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.